Alrighty. Sunday night. I don't think this is going to be a particularly long stream. We'll see. I was thinking about just doing some odds and ends stuff. So today I've been just kind of working on getting everything in order here. We've got a good setup now. Let me refresh this. Is everything good? Nope, we got this like improving sleep is Ariel. Why? Why? Why is this Ariel? I'm gonna have to figure out why at some point. But for now we can just do that. Nope, we want to go all Calibri or Calibri. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is similar. We've got body budgeting still, and then I kind of updated all these guys. So we can talk about glutamate and GABA in excitation and inhibition, just to make it clear that that the brain inhibits. That's really like the idea here. We want to just point out that a lot of what we take for granted in terms of regulating our behaviors and whatnot and directing our attention is actually inhibition. So I think that's important for people to just kind of know. Then we've got energy and motivation. We could talk about glucose, glycogen, glutamate, adenosine, stuff like that. Build up. We got drives and rewards. This is what everyone knows. Dopamine, prediction error, endocannabinoids, opioids, payoff, dopamine tolerance, the will versus the way, motivation, self-determination theory, which we're going to get to in a second, agency and goal pursuit, then attention and focus. Now we can introduce some of the other molecules we talked about: norepinephrine, alertness, and acetylcholine, the selective aspect of attention. We can talk about cortisol, serotonin here, and yeah, we could talk about framing and how that affects serotonin levels, and framing affects everything. So I don't know. Yeah, this would be the case with many neuromodulators. Where do we put this? Social molecules. Here I just have sex hormones right now, but we're going to need to talk about them in general. And that's all we have. Let me just jump into emotion regulation. The tricky thing I'm finding is, like, how do we talk about some of the big topics like improving sleep, whereas that affects a lot of these, but we really want to make sure that, yeah, like I think this works because improving sleep can talk about all the things you can do to improve sleep, but we could talk about how sleep affects these things. So that's how we can separate them out. Now the difficult part is, like, yeah, cognitive performance. How do we separate that from these guys? And yeah, I'm gonna have to feel that one out. All right, so I didn't realize that self-actualization theory and self-determination theory were actually two different things. I acted as if they were one. The thing that Dr. K mentioned previously was self-determination theory, and self-actualization theory was a Maslow-ism. So we'll have to yo, and okay life, what's good? Looks like he's actually understood how to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, is this a Yu-Gi-Oh fit, or are we talking about the molecule names? Oh, I look like a person who would know how to play. Yeah, unfortunately, I never got into. I don't think I got into any card game. I think that either it wasn't my time or I just wasn't interested in that stuff. Shame, yeah. No, I mean the closest I got was playing like, yeah, playing Pokemon Ruby, but I never went into card games. And then in terms of cartoons, I don't think I was ever really exposed to the Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, I forget what the name of that really popular anime was. I don't know. Nice shoe rack. Oh, we got shoe rack in the mix, right? Yeah, I was supposed to curve this thing. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you can see the shoes for today. I'll curve it tomorrow. So this is a standing desk. Got the LeBrons. Not quite. Got a lot of Allbirds over there, and then AF1s. Yeah, this is a standing desk, but now that I have this teleprompter here, I'm also probably not even level. My camera doesn't look level. Whenever I want to actually bring the desk up, I need to now adjust the teleprompter because it's kind of big. So, Jordan's on my feet, unreleased. Call me rich, son. Yeah, I don't know anything about shoes. I just my friend would get AF1s like as if it was you know a bi-monthly thing, and I just kind of got the sense that those were like the most safe shoes you can go with for you know what was popular. Also, I thought they looked good. I don't know if I think a lot of the, or I don't know if I find all the shoes that tend to be popular look good. So, all right. Which shoes did you say? Just the regular white AF1s. Stanites rise. Welcome back, Darmadam. What is poppin'? Okay. While both theories explore human growth and what it means to live a fulfilling life, they differ fundamentally in how they structure human needs and what they believe drives motivation. So self-actualization theory, this was Maslow, is a hierarchical framework. It suggests that humans must satisfy lower basic needs like safety and food before they can focus on higher growth needs. Self-actualization is the final destination, the pinnacle of the pyramid. Self-determination theory, Deci and Ryan, is a universal framework. Okay, it argues that three specific psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, are essential nutrients required for well-being at every stage of life. There is no pyramid. These needs are always present and necessary. So this is probably more backed up by science these days. Granted, we know of effects of not having everything that's in this pyramid. We know the effects that can have on your well-being. So something like scarcity does affect your well-being. But this is probably like a more fundamental thing in terms of feeling good, even when you're not in a situation where you have all the bottom level needs. Like you could be going hungry, but you could still feel positive emotion because of the checklist here, the criteria here. Okay. Good. Not up to much. Hell yeah. What's good? E.T. chillin'. The point of the pyramid is that you need one before you need the other, not that you can only have a few categories. Right. So this is arguing that, or I mean, what's implicit here, what's implied, is that regardless of where you are on the pyramid, you can have well-being provided that these things are met. So it's kind of like you could get self-actualization in some sense prior to meeting the other ones below, depending on what we mean by self-actualization. I mean, if we're just looking for like positive well-being and feeling good about yourself, then I think self-determination theory is probably going to be the one that wins out. But we'll see. Detail comparison. We got structure. All are simultaneously required for psychological health. Okay, the primary drive. Deficiency versus growth. We are driven first by what we lack, deficiency needs like food, safety, and only later by the desire to grow. Okay, so maybe this is a description about what captures our attention. Innate growth tendency. Humans are naturally active and growth oriented. We don't just react to deficits, we actively seek challenges and connection. Okay, so this is, once again, probably more true given what we know today, but I could be wrong. I'm just speculating, but we could always ask. 5 levels of needs, right? And then we've got the basic psychological needs. So this is what Dr. K was talking about way back in that consciousness roundtable with Alex O'Connor. We need autonomy, the feeling of volition and choice, the feeling that we made a choice and that there was a consequence, regardless of whether the consequence was good or bad. That was the thing that Dr. K said. You just need to feel like you made the choice, like you had the power there and you made the choice. All right, competence, feeling effective and capable, and then relatedness, feeling connected to others. So this, in a very philosophical sense, could be also like recognition, feeling as though you're recognized, not necessarily like recognized as, in some status, but recognized literally in the fact that people are recognizing your beliefs or your perspective. Did you see the news about the Bank of England? I did not. Can't tell if this is a genuine question or if we're being set up for a D's nuts joke. Wow. Yeah, what happened with the Bank of England? All right, view on self-actualization. It is the final stage or goal. It is a state of being that only a small percentage of people fully reach. So this could also just be semantics here. Now, like the semantics over what self-actualization means. And, the thing that we're going to do at the very beginning of part 3 is to figure out what is the thing that we actually want. And so we don't want to make something like an ambiguous value of like self-actualization. Like that's like, what does that mean? Like really we want to feel positive emotion, but also we could say like we could also cheat in this way where we want it to be the case such that if you were to ask yourself if your life is meaningful, that you'd be able to say yes. So rather than have some universal criteria that works for everyone in like a concrete sense, we could do a universal criteria that requires someone to, give their own opinion of what that would mean. So in this case, it would be like, does the person feel self-actualized? And I'd imagine that the science would show us that if that was our actual criteria, that this would be, that the self-determination theory would be closer to home in terms of, if we were to have a study, an experiment where we figured out what actually led people to think that they were self-actualized, whatever that might mean. All right, so self-actualization is a process. So, this is also a great sign. Whenever something's a process rather than a state, then that's a good sign. Self-actualizing happens naturally when the 3 basic needs are supported. It is the result of high-quality motivation. All right, scientific standing. Philosophical anecdotal. Maslow's work was largely based on biographical analysis of famous figures. It is intuitively appealing but hard to test scientifically. And then empirical data-driven self-determination theory is supported by decades of experimental research and quantitative studies across cultures, making it the dominant modern theory of motivation. Hell yeah. Okay. England, my balls. Very nice. Well done. Stuck the landing. All right, they're preparing for UFO disclosure. Oh, that's cool. Like taking measures against financial collapse if it happens, something like that. Whoa. Oh my gosh. I think it's just a contingency disclosure plan. They probably have a plan for everything Trump could or would do too. Yeah. I'm wondering if like if England would come out with some UFO thing, like would it end up just being like, oh, this is a bunch of U.S. or Chinese, uh, devices, and people are so astonished that the technology is that advanced that that could hurt, I don't know, the economy in some way. I'm not sure. I'm not even speculating. It's like worse than speculating. All right, the difference in motivation. One of the most practical differences lies in how they explain why we do things. Maslow focused on need satisfaction. He argued that if you are hungry, physiological need, or in danger, safety need, you cannot focus on writing poetry or learning a new language, self-actualization. Okay, so what's implied here is that you kind of need this type of thing for self-actualization, whereas according to self-determination theory, you really don't. Your motivation is dictated by whichever level of the pyramid is currently unsatisfied. That being said, if we were to test what Maslow's really trying to say, like this ambiguous notion of self-actualization aside, if we were to test like what captured people's attention, given what they had, then we would probably see something that similar to what Maslow's saying, where it's like if you didn't have these needs, that would probably be capturing your attention rather than poetry. That being said, I think a lot of people in history, poor and in perhaps scarcity, settings would have made a lot of creative stuff. Like I think a lot of people did write poetry or music. Learning a new language is a little wild. That's something that I think is really privileged. Like we have the privilege of learning more than one language, whereas people like 1,000 years ago, unless they were like born, or unless they learned multiple languages when young, I imagine that they would need to be decently well off in order to have the time to learn new languages. I could be wrong about that too. I'm just speculating. Okay. If aliens were confirmed, you would have a 15% collapse in the financial markets, and then everyone would go to work the next day. Yeah, I don't know if it would. I don't think it's going to ever be as simple as just aliens are real. Chances are it would be a certain technology is real, and then we start figuring out like, okay, how could this technology exist? The reason no peasant ever wrote poetry is because they couldn't read, right? Okay, that's a fair point. Came along and said, okay, yep. So I imagine the creative outlet could have been visual. Maybe it was sketches. I don't know. Maybe when did writing utensils start? Maybe it was just singing, to distract from Epstein, if that's the reason. Oh, what am I doing? That's the reason it comes out. Yep, that seems to be the case. All right. Self-determination theory focuses on the quality of motivation. It distinguishes between controlled motivation, doing something because of pressure, guilt, or rewards, and autonomous motivation. So this is also considered intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. I want to actually make sure that's the case. Is controlled, autonomous, just another way of saying extrinsic, intrinsic, respectively? All right, a starving artist might neglect Maslow's lower needs to pursue art. Maslow's theory struggles to explain this. Self-determination theory explains it easily. The artist is fulfilling their high need for autonomy and competence, which sustains them even when physical needs are unmet. That's a better example than I gave. Summary of the shift. Okay. Literacy really began increasing after the printing press and especially after the Enlightenment. So all of this, what you're doing now, is new. Right. Are there any neuroscience books you recommend? Oh, absolutely. Actually, I mean, the main one is the one that we just read. I think that even beats out Damasio at this point. 7.5 lessons about the brain. Like, this doesn't go that deep into brain jargon at all, and yeah, it's just like straight to the point. Talks about the stuff. I mean, we've read like a good chunk of this stuff, and we still have some to go. I haven't read that much on neuroscience. It was that. It was Damasio's. What was it? Something strange? Damasio. Strange order things. But yeah, it depends what you want to get out of like the book. What kind of books are out there? I think I would want like up to date nuts and bolts, like down and in the weeds. Like how in the weeds are we going? Because you can get real in the weeds. Yeah, it's. Oh, I mean like basic. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, the most basic. That was all. The most basic book. That was also substantive. Was that 7.5 lessons book? Like that, you know. I don't even think that went deep into any anatomy, and it really just said a lot about. Like the most fundamental tenets of the brain, basically. Now the book that I'm reading right now, which no, this is probably too much, but Behave by Sapolsky. This book is huge, so I don't know how long it's going to take me to read, but it's also specifically focusing on like our I don't know, our violent behaviors, like the behaviors that we would Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh. This is my my light that I don't even use, and it just came falling. Okay. Let's stop with the omen. Let's stop with these absolute jump scares. I don't have my blackout curtain up, so I think we're good, but I gotta make sure I know why this thing fell. That's terrifying. Okay, counter curse. What's the counter curse? We gotta find a Gact video quick. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This'll do it. This'll do it. Let's go back. Oh, what summer should feel like. This is it. Okay. We can all chill now. Oh my gosh. When did he have kittens? I have not read the For Dummies series. Well, actually, you know, I probably read a book or a couple books in the series. Like probably like Personal Finance. Yeah, Sapolsky seems to be pretty locked in, and he's mentioning all the stuff that seems to be like up to date, contemporary. If an angel pushed a light onto my desk in front of me, I think someone was playing a prank on me. I was thinking about this because I've been like reading about different conditions where people are you know, they're forgetting. No, it was the condition where like where the dude was like, it was murderous, even though he didn't know why. Like he, you know, it was that situation where Sapolsky mentioned that it was the guy that like he might have like killed his family, but then he wrote the note, like a note saying like, I have no idea why I'm doing this. I really love my family. And I was thinking like, in that, like, I have to just assume that what I see, or you know, if I see the angel, if I see someone teleport, if I teleport, like I have to assume that I have to just go to the hospital, like something's wrong, because the brain can just do that, you know. You could just feel, you know, like you forget something, or so I can't trust anything that breaks the logic of the universe. I have to go to a hospital. All right, that's called synchronicity. The object will have something relevant written on it. Oh, wait. Which object? Do you ever analyze the symbolism of stuff like it's a dream? Christians basically do this. Ooh. Are you saying that there's some like something happens to me in real life, it's like a symbol and I have to now make sense out of it? In a pretty like also astrology way? Because that's fine. I think what we're doing in that case is we are leveraging our imagination and also our subconscious understanding, and we're trying to make sense of it. But yeah, I feel like in that case, it's less about making the actual sense of it, and it's more about, you know, figuring out what is unconscious. So like with our dreams, it's like, oh, I might be concerned about this thing. I didn't realize that this wasn't a thing I thought about during the day. But if my brain's giving me this type of story, then, you know, perhaps something deep down is really concerned about this thing. Yeah, step into symbol land and think of everything as symbols. Yeah, I mean that could certainly be helpful. You know, a lot of the treatment that, like, you know, I've watched a few Dr. K videos recently, and a lot of the treatment that he talks about, especially for like anxiety, is trying to figure out if there's some like unresolved issue, whether it's from, you know, your distant past or recent past, and yeah, dreams can help you figure that kind of thing out. Your brain's trying to just run through it. I remember having like multiple dreams last night, but I don't remember what they were. There's a territory I conceptualize as Jung trip stuff. He tripped out super hard. Did he actually trip a lot? Like, was he into that? Like thinking nonstop of symbols and feeding your imagination and visualization? Yeah, I mean, once you start thinking about the symbols, once you start expecting symbols, then you're going to see symbols. Like, that's just kind of how this works. He had a practice called active imagination. Yeah, like, as part of this document, like, a lot of the things that we talk about is, hey, like, these are things you can expect. Like, you can expect this aspect of experience. That's kind of what you do in mindfulness for emotions. Like, you know, pay attention to what this emotion feels like, and you could become more familiar with it, and you can now expect it. You can expect that it's going to come when this type of thing happens, and you can notice it, and you can acknowledge it, and you don't have to let it drive you without your awareness. I've practiced it a tiny bit in very trippy, interesting territory. Wow. Oh, that made him trip out, and he wrote the Red Book. Oh, okay. I've heard of the Red Book. I don't know what's in it, but I know it's popular. I know it's
just push.
Whoa! I know it's kind of legendary. Okay, is controlled autonomous just another way of saying extrinsic, intrinsic, respectively? Not exactly. While they are related concepts, they are not synonymous. The confusion is often very common because intrinsic motivation is indeed always autonomous. However, extrinsic motivation is not always controlled. It can actually be autonomous too. In self-determination theory, the controlled versus autonomous distinction is about the source of the pressure, not just the reward. Source of the pressure, not just the reward. Oh, what is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation then? Maybe I don't understand that. Self-determination breaks extrinsic motivation down into 4 distinct types. It realizes that doing something for a result, extrinsic, can feel very different depending on whether you agree with the result or are forced to do it. Okay. Controlled motivation, pressure. This is when you feel forced to act. External regulation, extrinsic. You do it strictly for a reward to avoid a punishment. I drive the speed limit so I don't get a ticket. And then there's introjected regulation. You do it because of internal pressure, guilt, or ego. Okay. Internal, external. But this isn't about whether or not you choose to do it. These are both controlled. I see. Autonomous motivation. This is when you feel you're acting out of your own volition. Extrinsic. You do it because you personally value the outcome, even if the task isn't fun. The activity is fully assimilated into your identity. For example, I run because I am a runner. It's who I am. So that could be... Okay, is that not... Why wouldn't that be intrinsic? Intrinsic motivation. You do it purely for the inherent satisfaction or fun. This is a little... Oh, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. They're putting identity as extrinsic. Okay, this is still going to be... No, I still feel like these two are so close that we either have to pick. They're both extrinsic or intrinsic. It seems rather ambiguous to separate integrated regulation and intrinsic motivation. ... Each are operating on an understanding about what the self can do in order to meet some what would it be? Some sort of some emotional goal. The extrinsic trap. If you equate extrinsic with controlled, you miss the possibility of autonomous extrinsic motivation. Yep, that would be the case. Okay. There are 2 types of people who have heard of Jung. Bro, this guy is a mystic is number 1, and Jung is pseudoscience is number 2. This is active imagination, for example. Just today, I was kind of nodding off hypnagogic while meditating, and a face flashed in my mind. I had brought back the image and greeted it and felt this huge dissipation of energy in my body. Wow. That's pretty cool. Then there is the Jung did more in conceptualizing mythology than he did for psychology as number 3. Wow. I'm not sure where I would sit there. I really don't know the scope of his work and what people have found to be the most true and what people find to be more of just mythologizing. Okay, you hit on the most subtle and debated distinction in the entire self-determination framework. You are absolutely right that the line is blurry. In practice, both feel completely voluntary and both feel like they come from the self. However, in the theory, there is a technical hard line between them based on teleology, the end goal of the behavior. The distinction comes down to, are you doing it for the experience or the result? Okay. The experience or the result? Okay, how is the experience not a result? Especially when we need to interpret the experience, which is effectively a result. The boredom test, the litmus test. The easiest way to separate them is to imagine the activity becoming difficult, tedious, or frustrating. Intrinsic motivation, the experience. The reward is the activity itself. You do it because it stimulates you right now. The test, if you actively stop, if the activity stops being fun, you stop doing it. Example, you play tennis because you love the feeling of hitting the ball. If you're tired or the weather is bad, you simply don't play because the fun is gone. But integrated regulation, the identity. The reward is the result or the expression of self. You do it because it aligns with your identity, even if the activity itself is currently unpleasant. Okay. If the activity stops being fun, you continue doing it because it is who you are. That seems pretty pathological. Okay, if I were to accept the distinction, though, would not the identity effectively be external in a deeply philosophical sense? At that point, who is really choosing to continue? If you make an identity that's that stringent. Have you thought of doing a pseudo master prompt, like a paragraph you design before every message to stop glazing or whatever? I haven't, just because I'm concerned that it can overly bias it in ways that I wouldn't want. That being said, I might have a master prompt on here. I gotta check. And then I want to watch both of these videos before the night runs out. Do I have a master prompt? Maybe I only have it for ChatGPT. Yeah, I do not have any instructions. I can add it to the settings. I think you could do it on ChatGPT. We watch that one Nietzsche video for a bit of fun? Which one Nietzsche video? Okay, what happened here? Arguing that the distinction relies on an arbitrary boundary between doing and feeling, and the self is just an accumulation of external influences. You're in good company with these questions. They touch on the friction between psychology, which needs functional definitions to run experiments, and philosophy, which demands rigorous definitions of self and cause. Self-determination attempts to answer the two challenges. You're arguing okay. Separability. You are technically correct that fun is an outcome. However, self-determination theory distinguishes between inseparable outcomes and separable outcomes. Intrinsic motivation, inseparable. The result is inherent to the activity. You cannot get the fun of playing chess without actually playing the chess. and then integrated extrinsic motivation. The result can theoretically be achieved another way. If your goal is to be a healthy person, you could run, swim, or diet. The activity, running, is just a vehicle for the identity goal. If a pill could make you perfectly healthy, the integrated runner might stop. The intrinsic runner would keep running because they want to run, not just the health. Okay, I see. All right, the identity is external challenge. Your argument, if my identity is formed by culture, parents, history, isn't acting according to identity, just acting on deeply programmed external commands? Who is the chooser? This is the hardest question in motivation theory. If I value hard work because my father did, am I truly autonomous? The self-determination theory rebuttal. The digestion metaphor, self-determination theory admits that almost all integrated values start as external societal norms. The difference between controlled and autonomous is not origin, but assimilation. They use a biological metaphor, digestion. So control, this is like swallowing a coin. It is inside you, but it isn't part of you. It remains a foreign object. If you act based on it, you are reacting to an internal pressure. And then integration, autonomous. This is like eating an apple. The apple comes from outside, but your body breaks it down, observes. Okay. What can we try to come up with the physiological / neurological basis of integration? Would it be that at some point the person has a specific experience, conscious or unconscious, that involves the subject, the object at hand, and results in some feeling of positive emotion? Does it require a specific feeling, conscious or unconscious, of ownership? Perhaps a story told by the DMN. Then in the subsequent experience that we are talking about, we can say that the person is predisposed differently to feel better, or perhaps just not worse, about the activity / result. Actually, the activity. / identity. Okay. All right. This is kind of wild, but let's run it. The answer to who is choosing. Self is not a static object or a ghost in the machine. The self is the process of integration. If you have fully digested the value of hard work, if you have reflected on it, endorsed it, and made it fit with your other values, it has become you. Right, so this is clear, like when you have clearly reflected on it. But I'm wondering, like, what happens when, you might not know that you've reflected on it, but you have. And when you act on, you aren't obeying your father, you are obeying your synthesized self. Okay, if you take strict determinist view, that we are nothing but a bundle of inputs, then yes, the distinction collapses. Both intrinsic biology, dopamine, and integrated history, culture are external inputs, which is why I asked what I asked. I'm trying to see if we can actually make sense of this distinction within deterministic view. Okay, sorry about all that. We've got a Nietzsche video. I know my fate. Did we already watch this? Only because Nietzsche's project was very similar to yours, but the way you went about it is vastly different. The video itself is a good perspective or overview of his philosophy and project. Also, Heidegger was quite interested in Nietzsche. Okay. Yeah, no, we could get to it. Once I'm done this, we could start going through these videos. I don't know how long we need to actually follow up on this, but All right. You're essentially trying to bridge the gap between phenomenology, that felt sense of ownership, and mechanistic neuroscience. Your intuition about the default mode network and the concept of predisposition aligned with the current research in decision neuroscience and self-processing. Here is a hypothetical model of the physiological neurological basis of integration, building on exactly the mechanism you proposed. The neurological difference between controlled and autonomous motivation likely comes down to neural efficiency and network connectivity. The introjected brain. This is the swallowed coin. You're not happy about this thing. It's still a foreign object inside of you. When you are forcing yourself to do something you haven't integrated, for example, I must go to the gym or I am a failure, your brain is in a state of conflict monitoring. The ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, which is determining, I think this is helping determine salience and conflict and whatnot. This region lights up when there is a mismatch between what you want to do, sit on the couch, and what you are doing. It signals error, conflict. Top-down inhibition, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This is the very top layer, the prefrontal cortex, which does all the, the newest stuff, let's just say. The most executive stuff. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex has to step in like a strict teacher. It burns metabolic energy to inhibit your impulses. The feeling, this high energy conflict state, is felt subjectively as willpower, pressure, or resistance. So it's harder to do this. It's harder to do something that you've now just swallowed. The integrated brain, the digested food, when that same activity becomes integrated, the conflict signal vanishes. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, so this is the layer that sits in between the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. This is the star of the show. It is the integration hub that calculates subjective value. It takes the activity gym and checks it against your internal values / memories. The DMN connection, your ownership, as you hypothesized, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex is strongly connected to the DMN. If the activity matches the DMN story, I am a healthy person, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex assigns it high intrinsic value. The brain no longer needs the strict teacher to force the action. The action generates its own momentum because the self network validates it. So, yeah, what I was trying to get at is this could be very subtle. It doesn't have to be like very clear cut that you knowingly believe that you're this type of person. But if your brain has even in the past had that experience of like, I could do this even unconsciously, then or some experience of positive emotion, like maybe you enjoyed it slightly and felt like this is something you could do. All right, addressing your specific mechanism. You asked 3 specific questions about how this happens. Let's map them to biology. Does it involve a specific experience resulting in positive emotion? This is reward prediction error plus affective tagging, neurotranslation. So this is the mechanism of actually changing what's in the brain. We talked about this tagging mechanism a few days ago when we were talking about long-term potentiation. So chemical tagging on the connections that were activated in the actual experience, and then once you get that reward prediction error, which is a big dump of dopamine, that dopamine actually wherever that tagging was, it'll actually help strengthen those connections. All right, mechanism. You do the hard task and you don't die. In fact, you feel proud, serotonin / dopamine. The brain updates the priors. It tags the difficult activity not just as painful effort, but as painful effort that leads to homeostasis or social reward. It doesn't just have to be joy, it can be the relief of anxiety. If acting congruently with your values reduces the cognitive dissonance alarm in the brain, that reduction of stress is itself a massive reward. All right, does it require a specific feeling of ownership told by the DMN? Yes, this is self-referential processing. The DMN is active when we think about ourselves, our past, and our future. For a value to move from external to integrated, it must be encoded into the DMN's autobiography. The shift before integration, the concept hard work is stored in semantic memory, facts / rules. After integration, the concept hard work is physically linked to the DMN, triggering the concept triggers me. Biologically, ownership is just the co-activation of the active networks and the self network. Okay, is the person predisposed differently? So this has to be yes, but integration is a physical restructuring of the brain's priors. Long-term potentiation and reduced thresholds. The path of least resistance. In the unintegrated brain, the path from see gym shoes to go running is weak and blocked by pain prediction. And that it requires you to assert a lot of straight up discipline or willpower in order to get past that. In the integrated brain, that pathway is heavily myelinated and connected to identity reward. The brain essentially predicts that doing the hard thing will restore your sense of self, so it facilitates the action rather than blocking it. Crazy. I mean, this is obviously the case with morality. We're just, covering it early. But we will get there. All right, let's start getting into these things. What's going on here? Train your attention so good it feels weird to scroll. You know what? I'm so black-pilled now on watching videos. I think we should just ask about this is so bad. But asking about summaries of all these videos, especially the long ones. All right, this video addresses the struggle with short-term attention spans in the age of constant stimulation, particularly among Gen Z. The creator emphasizes that while technology contributes to this issue, it's our responsibility to fix it. The core solution proposed is to embrace boredom and lower our base. This is good stuff. So we can actually watch starting there.
The obvious unsexy answer is to just do the complete opposite. To be able to pull down.
Yep, and it is an unsexy answer. It sucks. It's just the worst thing that anyone wants to hear. But tired of these types of videos too. They're always a lot of filler and say nothing of true value. Very rarely will you find a good video or a good channel. Well, so far, or based on the you see, what I like about this summary is that we can actually see how good the content is before we actually try watching it. So this is great advice.
On that baseline and actually be able to focus, because you're not going to be needing to constantly depend on quick hits of dopamine throughout your day. Let's just do the complete opposite. Instead of being stimulated, this is so obvious. Just be bored. Just learn to embrace boredom. Back then, and I mean like 1 year ago, I literally could not stand a minute without checking my phone, or at least just having my phone in my hand. I could not stand longer periods of time without that. But nowadays, I've trained my attention span so good to the point that I can confidently and comfortably leave my headphones at home when I go outside, or I can even just go for a walk for like 15 minutes without my phone. And I achieved this, I believe, or I remember, from doing these two simple things. One, throw my phone in the ocean. Just kidding. Make my phone boring. And two, do boring shit.
And she's got jokes. For advice that is, Dr. K is pretty good to be. Dr. K seems to be pretty excellent, honestly. I think I trained my brain for boredom when I was a child because I used to raw dog absolutely every waiting state situation. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that sets you up. I think that's one of the things with iPad kids, or not iPad kids, but when you become a parent, I think that's one thing to keep in mind, that when you give them an iPad, it might help in the short term, but it hurts in the long term because they're still developing. That being said, even once you're developed and you used to raw dog all those types of situations, it still affects you, unfortunately. Like you have a better baseline than if you were to have not actually had that boredom. But it still affects everyone. We gotta keep dopamine in check. I've lost my sound. There we go.
Shit, or build boring habits, or like just those two, they're the same thing. So we're taking this all back to the basics. I assume you know this already, but if you don't, here are the most basic steps to take right now. 1, turn off your notifications. Literally just go to your settings, turn off every single notification for every single app that you have.
Wow.
If you're worried that you're gonna get an emergency or you're not gonna get called, sure, you can like keep the notifications on for messages, like the basic message app or your phone app where people can call you and stuff. Usually that would still, in like my phone, I would still be notified for things like that, but it's very rarely will I have emergencies. Second one, I don't see most people talk about this, but I guess instead of deleting your social media apps, you can download a minimalist launcher app. So for example, for Android, I use O Launcher app. I'm just gonna link it in the description. For iPhone, I'm sure there's this one app called Minimalist Phone. Yeah, there's a lot in Play Store or App Store. Just start using that. Honestly, it's like have changed my entire life when I started using Minimalist Launcher. So basically, what it does is hide icons from your phone, like the app icons itself. So my phone right now is just
Couldn't really
when I
do
open
anything
it,
with media outside
this is the only thing
back
it
then,
shows.
right? Yeah.
That's my home screen. That's
Maybe
that's my home
once
screen.
like
These emojis are
I
like
mean,
the
for
apps.
me it was
So that's like the calendar, Google,
once I had my hands
Notes app,
on
and then to find like the other apps.
on like a Nintendo DS or GameCube. I'm sorry, a Game Boy. Like that's when it started. That's when we were able to lock in.
There they are. I don't know if you can see. They're just words.
Oh my gosh,
Apps,
look
the
at
app
that.
icons are basically just words. But yeah, this just makes it so that your phone just looks more unattractive. Also, another thing I guess is to like get a boring phone case as well. Take off like the like the labubus that they put on top. I never had one of those. Take it off. Also like a strap, lace, something that you attach on like the side, so that all those stuff just makes your phone look more appealing to yourself. You're just putting yourself in a trap. When your phone looks nice, you just pick it up every single time just because you want to pick it up. So yeah, make it physically look unattractive. And the third one, this doesn't actually make your phone physically boring, but it's something I used to do and still do now because it just reduces my screen time and my tendency to pick up my phone the most. Every night before you go to sleep, take your phone, go outside, go out your room, find a room in your house that's far away from your bedroom and hide your phone there. Just hide your phone anywhere in that room. Just make sure your phone is not going to be near you in the morning when you wake up, because when you wake up, I want you to try not to check your phone for at least one.
So one of the things that I want to explore when talking about this type of thing, especially like addiction and habits in general, is like, is it better to so when you're trying to break a habit, there's a lot of these techniques you can use to make it harder for you to even get triggered towards the habit. Like you can set the scene such that you don't have the trigger there at all. Like, you know, you wake up and your phone's not there, so you don't want to go for it. I'm curious about, is it better, and better is not the word, but like, is it also effective to, if you feel like you have the willpower, if you can do it, is it better to keep your phone there and then force yourself to not pick up the phone? Like now you're building a different skill, because in the first case, yeah, you're getting a similar outcome in the sense that you're not going to use your phone right when you wake up, and that has a huge benefit towards your entire day. However, you haven't fixed this issue where if your phone was there, you would still be drawn to it, or you would be compelled to pick it up. And what you would, you know, in some sense, what you might want to do is build the skill of not being compelled by the thing that's right next to you. And so, yeah, like, is that the type of, I mean, obviously for like alcoholics, you don't want to like, that's such a strong pull that it's not like they're going to go into a bar just to build this skill. But yeah, like if you could, is that something worth doing? Like, is it worth getting closer to build the closer to home skill? And yeah, that's something I need to explore. And when I say explore, I mean probably just ask Gemini.
After waking up, this automatically reduces your screen time, or again your tendency to scroll, because you're not going to start with your day with immediately scrolling. Okay, so how are you feeling right now? I hope you're not dying. Someone's knocking on the door. Oh my god. So have you done the basic things? If you have, congrats, you've gotten rid of the main distraction. You've gained hours of your time back just in a day. Now what the heck do you actually spend it with? Now obviously the first thing is the studies or the hobbies that you wanted to focus on in the first place. You can do this first thing in the morning, literally to replace the time that you spend with scrolling first thing when you wake up. Plus, if it's going to be your priority, or whatever your priority is, then it's best to do it first thing in the morning, just because it's a priority.
Oh
right?
my gosh,
aside from this,
this,
you can also build boring habits. Well, maybe boring to you right now because of, again, your baseline, but habits that actually become fun after a few weeks of doing it. It might not sound possible to you right now, but trust me, just be consistent with it. This might be stuff like exercising, different types of exercising, maybe like running, any sports, calisthenics. It could also be meditating. That's something I also did back then, but I'm gonna be honest, right now I'm not doing it as much. There's also journaling, my personal favorite. It's something that I did the most back then. I was able to spend hours just writing and writing whatever thought comes to mind. And if you really just can't not consume right now, then I guess you could either read books or watch long form, almost unedited content like this. Obviously, it has to be something of your interest, so you actually like what you're watching, you're
Is this
learning from
long
it.
form?
And here's a catch: I want you to watch it
Well,
from
I guess anything compared to TikToks or long form.
start to finish. Again, with no other distraction, and just focus on the thing that you're watching. And I don't care how boring or uninteresting it gets, you should at least try to
So
finish watching
I
it.
want.
till
Should
the
I
end.
should I not be using the summary tools so that I can get through it as quickly as possible?
It also helps you so that you're not constantly
Oh, here we go. I would never take my Nintendo outside, like your Nintendo DS. Um, was it just too sacred? Like you thought you were gonna lose it or something? Revenge bedtime procrastination is also a huge thing nowadays. Revenge bedtime procrastination. Oh, what is that? Is that revenge bedtime? Is this like when you're going to bed, you stay on the phone as revenge for? I just played at home. It just felt weird to bring it out. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think for me, it was really just like during rides, maybe during weight rooms. But otherwise, I don't know if was much reason. Not going to sleep because you're literally procrastinating sleeping since you feel like you don't have enough time in the day. Right. Also, you still have that that dopamine pull even when you're trying to go to bed. Like you still want to get that feeling of that good feeling. And if you're stuck in that place, it might not feel worthwhile or beneficial at all to go to sleep, and that's an issue. That's what a Marxist would say. I mean, this Marx stuff is so easy. Yep. I mean, it is probably a straw man, but you'll probably find someone saying it.
clicking away and finding other content to consume. And it makes it so that you get used to being uncomfortable, which is, again, the complete opposite of always being entertained, stimulated. And finally, another, I guess, unpopular habit that I tried was to, when I had nothing else to do, I just did nothing. Literally just stare off into the distance or zone out. For example, when you're waiting in line or like commuting or walking to school, I just resisted trying to reach for my phone. What you do instead is entertain yourself with what's already in your surroundings. You can literally just observe everything from the people having conversations. Don't be a weirdo though.
Dog?
To the buildings passing by, or heck, even an ant on the floor. The point is to just try to be present in the moment and, again, embrace the boredom. Because if you didn't know, you're allowed to feel bored. You're allowed to not do anything. And most especially, allow your thoughts to come into surface. Because I know most of the time you're trying to not be bored or trying to not do anything because you're trying to avoid thoughts. You're trying to avoid your own thoughts and the reality of everything, maybe stress, something just unpleasant. Facing your thoughts is uncomfortable, which is exactly
These
the
are all
habit that
like
you
the
should try to
Dr.
get
K
used to if
answers.
you want to enhance your focus and your attention. Because after a while of doing this, you'll find that it's really not that bad. And again, this worked for me because that was basically rewiring my brain to not have to depend on quick hits of dopamine throughout the day, where I can just sit with my thoughts, watch people pass by, look at the sky, and think. So it's basically like the way of the monks. So congrats, you've made it to the end of this video.
Hell yeah.
Woo! You've got a taste of what it feels like to be bored. Probably bored of my voice and bored of my face. If you actually watch to the end with without any distractions, I know it feels uncomfortable, agonizing,
Things doing
terrible.
so
That's
never
what dopamine
works.
detox basically is. You gotta use willpower for the most part. It's not fun, but I guarantee you will get more things done. Once you stop depending on these
And it
quick
gets
hits
easier.
of dopamine, then you will actually feel almost free and liberated. It will be hard in the start, but like any other thing, it will be worth it in the end. You will literally be fine without your phone anymore, which you probably
Mountain
think is a
maxing.
crazy thing to say right now, but trust me,
Yeah,
you can stop being a
it is
slave to your
difficult.
phone.
I
'Cause
mean, the
this
whole goal
thing,
of
the brain rot is honestly so concerning. I see it in my 5-year-old cousins scrolling YouTube shorts and crying whenever their parents or whenever I take their phone away from them. Just throwing tantrums whenever they don't get to watch YouTube. It's crazy. I sincerely hope things turn out for the better and hope attention span of people in the future won't go to 5 seconds. Yeah, that's really it. That's all. That's the video. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
nice.
Shoot through.
This is another option, but all right. Should we go in this order then? What was I gonna say to that? Yeah, the goal here in part 2 is to make it as easy as possible to go from one of these things to the other. So like, what is actually the easiest way to build that habit of doing boring things or not using your phone? And you know, we can see that it helps if you get sleep. That's a big thing. It helps if you get a ton of sleep. It helps if you're exercising. It helps if you're eating good, eating well. And you know, you could stack all those things in your favor so that the willpower part is as easy as possible. And then obviously we know that if you do it over and over and over again, it gets easier and it becomes more of a habit in the other direction. And the other thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to go from 0 to 100. You could just start making slight changes, and those changes can become integrated into your new habit and routine, and you know, makes all the difference. Like if it was literally really difficult for you to not use your phone right when you woke up, then the first trick might be to wait right when you notice that you want to pick up your phone, wait 5 seconds and then pick up your phone. Like you're going to be able to pick up your phone in 5 seconds. It's all good. But you just wait 5 seconds. And then maybe you do it longer, and then soon it's like, okay, we have to wait 2 minutes anyway. Why don't I just get up and brush my teeth first, and then we can look at the phone, you know, something like that. I know my fate. One day my name will be associated with the memory of something tremendous, a crisis without equal on earth, the most profound collision of conscience. Uh-oh. I'm no man, I am dynamite. Jesus.
I am a wanderer and a mountain climber, Zarathustra said to his heart.
Okay, is this a someone is reading Nietzsche? Like this is a reading of something he wrote?
What returns, what finally comes home to me is my own self. Alas, I have begun my loneliest walk. But whoever is of my kind cannot escape such an hour. The hour which says to him, only now are you going your way to greatness. Peak and abyss, they are now joined together. For all things are baptized in a well of eternity and lie beyond good and evil. Philosophy, as I have so far understood and lived it, means living voluntarily among ice and high mountains, seeking out everything strange and questionable in existence, everything so far placed under a ban by morality.
I'm glad that philosophy for us today is not this crazy, in the sense that because we have such access to previous philosophers and science. Like we don't have to be in such a position where we need to go out into the unknown. Like we have everything we need. You know, it's all been given for us. We just have to read it. We have to put it together. I genuinely think like philosophy's been kind of solved in a sense, and yeah, now the challenge is how to package the solution, how to make it accessible, and that's going to be, you know, that's the challenge, because people obviously aren't, you know, that they don't act as if they know what, the stuff we've learned in the past, you know, 50 years. So we just need to be yeah, we gotta do that. We gotta do that job. But I don't see the job as being like we're finding out and we're finding these like these new things. You know, we're just putting the pieces together. What Nietzsche talks about here is more so completely deconstructing philosophy that is seen as traditional and coming with something bombastic and life-changing. Now, you could say that we're doing that. I don't think we're like. I don't know if we want to take on such an identity as he is with being a destroyer. You know, we're not trying to destroy in a sense. We're trying to build a bridge. That's really it. We're trying to. Your project is similar, but you're not as bombastic as Nietzsche, right? Right, but like we're also like better equipped to make like a transition rather than for Nietzsche. Like, you know, all he has is his words and the influence that could, you know, have. Like we have the capacity to talk to people all around the world and make YouTube videos and stuff like that. Like we have a lot more opportunity in terms of how we can go about this strategically. The thing is, all Nietzsche wants to have are his words. He's very concerned with art, for example. I'm curious what he's concerned about. Is he concerned about the ambiguity in art, the ambiguous nature of it?
The ice is near, the solitude tremendous, but how serenely all things.
The other thing is we don't want to feel like we're in solitude here. Like the whole goal is to build this community as we embrace this type of philosophy that I believe that the science implies, and to leverage it for the sake of building a practical way of thinking about the world. Like I think that's kind of the essence here. And it's a pursuit that leads to everyone being risen at the same time. So it's really triumphant and not one of individuality.
In the light, how freely one breathes, how much one feels lies beneath oneself. And so onwards.
He's concerned with how art can be life-affirming. The most important question of modern philosophy is overcoming nihilism for him. He even predicts that there will exist a last man like there is now. What do we mean by like a last man? Nihilistic, consumerist. He thinks that only a few people can ever embody his philosophy and become overmen or above the herd. Interesting. So is being the overman basically beating nihilism? Is that the idea? Like the goal is to break out of nihilism? Beating nihilism can be one goal, but it's more so being above all values seen as traditional. Nietzsche is very obsessed with power, for example. So one of the things we kind of arrive at in part one is that it's not that we embrace constraints, like in the sense that we're just like going to succumb to all the traditional values that we have, but we recognize that these values are constraints that we operate within. Like the things that our culture has instilled in us that are internalized, things that we don't even realize that are internalized. Like this is our foundation, and it also leads us to our horizons of what's possible. So we get to leverage that and use it to go in directions that we can imagine, but those imagined directions are still afforded by the foundation we have. So yeah, I'm wondering if he would like the sound of that at all, or if he was very much against the constraints in every sense. Like I feel as though that the conclusion is, in order to break out of any constraints, you have to leverage them. You can say that all of the existentialists try to answer the question of nihilism. You might even say that the reason you're so drawn to creating this document is because this is the chief, most important question in philosophy ever. Ooh. Perhaps. We could interpret it that way. Yeah, my concern is that so without this document, a lot of people are going to still be fine. They're going to be able to operate under whatever type of framework they have going. Perhaps it's religious, perhaps it's spiritual of some sort, and that's fine. They're going to be fine. For those people, I think that laying all this stuff out there, making it all explicit, can give them even further agency and power over their their life. But also, once we get to part 3, it's going to point out, it's kind of hook them into morality in such a way that maybe they don't already think about. But yeah, my concern was for the people that, without the document, that they would suffer more. And so yeah, you could say that, but it's not necessarily nihilism. And in many cases, it's probably nihilism, but no, I would say it's probably a question of, or it's probably an aspect of nihilism, that they're not convinced about perhaps a certain religious or spiritual framework. Like there's still doubt. Like the cool thing about the framework that I'm building here is there's really no doubt. Unless you literally doubt the science and the conclusions that people have come up with because of the science, then there's no. I mean, yeah, I guess that could be it. I'm pushing this idea that the science doesn't allow us to entertain the idea of like panpsychism over a view of our conscious experience that is grounded in evidenced science, physical science, and perhaps people could still find doubt in that. And the way to rectify that is to just build a more appreciation and respect for the scientific method and what it entails. But yeah, okay, that's a key difference. You're more concerned with just regular people like JP. Right. Nietzsche thinks that only very certain people can ever overcome nihilism, religion, faith to pursue their own will to power. Yeah, I feel like Nietzsche wasn't able to, like literally just wasn't able to imagine the type of power we have now with information. Like, I think it is actually much, I genuinely think it's easier for people to get to a point where they can overcome nihilism, religion, faith, all that with just the right like the right story, really, the story that includes this information that we could all commit to in some way. Although there is a convergence here, you go Nietzsche to JP to Stan Richardson. Right. Yeah, no, I'm really just excited to get more people to give feedback on the content of the stuff that I've been saying. Like, we really don't have much feedback about the stuff that I say. I see feedback, you know, obviously when we make these videos. I see feedback, obviously, just in stream here, and then I also see feedback in a sense when I read something and it like seems to resonate deeply. That's good feedback. But like I'm really hoping that we can get at some point some eyes on this, such that we can get like some serious feedback. And perhaps this just requires me to start going out there and like trying to get conversations with people. Question is who I want to talk to, or who would want to talk. So we got to start networking. Yeah, perhaps we do. The issue is, though, like that I'm still trying to deal with, and it's just a real bummer, because I know that, you know, I've been kind of talking about the networking now since like October. The real issue is that I need to learn a lot more stuff for part 2 of this document, and that is going to be a lot of time, and I don't have much time in the day. So yeah, like how much should I be focused on growth and marketing and networking, and then how much should I be focused on making sure that we keep progress on the actual content here? Because, you know, we got, like, in theory, we have plenty of time, in the sense that, like, you know, I'm going to just keep doing this. So I'm really training. I'm training myself to be able to handle myself in conversations that, you know, really matter later on. Send a handwritten letter to any department researcher of interest at your local college. Okay. And then what? This is just for them to see it, or am I going there? Yeah, then there's the question of like what kind of networking should I pursue? There's also the issue that now that I've been reading a lot, I do think that part 1 needs a slight revamp in terms of how we talk about a few things. Now, it's not going to take too long, but I think sometime this year I do want to spend some time going back into part 1 and like seeing if we can rewrite some like small parts. Not rewrite, but maybe add to. You can go there. I think they have office appointments. It depends on what that you want to do, right? Yeah, no, I'll have to think about it. The one thing I wanted to do this week on Wednesday, concurrent growth, a discussion of how I could use resources to further the development of the channel while maintaining my everyday efforts. If I'm going to continue keeping a job, then I might as well use, you know, extra money that I make for the sake of growing this channel. Like, I don't think I'm being as efficient as I possibly can be. So I'm wondering, like, should I be looking into, you know, all the different, you know, services that are out there, whether it's, I forget what that one is where you pay people to do stuff. You don't use X, right? I do have an X account for Stan Richardson, but I don't use it. What did I do on X? I posted something on X. I think every time something happens, it gets posted X currently. But I'm not sure. I don't know. Oh, man. Okay, I'll do that later. Yeah, so I want to have a, you know, a Gemini discussion about like what things I could do right now with my resources or just straight up money that can get this channel going such that I don't have to do that work. So it might be building out animations, or it might be building out whatever. I need to look into that. I just want to know how could I potentially invest in this channel such that I don't have to do that type of thing, so I can continue doing the stuff that I do usually do. And then yeah, because I don't mind investing in this channel. This is literally all I do in life outside of fun stuff, hobbies, and friends. So yeah, I might as well go all in. All right, what else we got here?
Along a
Nietzsche.
path.
What else we got here? Nietzsche. Oh, I hear myself. Mute. The YouTube videos always garner a lot of attention. Yeah, I know. I gotta figure out what's worth making a YouTube video on. Like, it was really important that I made those consciousness videos because I learned a lot of really important stuff during that. But that's like one of the most important things that I could learn. So shorts, yeah, I think shorts might be the answer here. And I do have notes on shorts I could be making from previous streams that I just need to find, or I need to start doing that work. So that could be it. Maybe that's it. Like, do we just start doing short form content? We start just having that be a thing that is out there, and see what happens. See if that builds this thing up. The important thing is finding people who are actually willing to give feedback, I think. Yeah. I mean, it's also going to be a numbers game. Like, once we have enough people, then there's going to be some subset of people that are that are interested enough to give feedback. And I think that's like kind of the game to play. And then it's also going to be kind of a feedback loop where if there's more recognition of the credence of the document, then there will be more interest in people actually jumping into it. Still waiting on the Samara's wife is it real video. Oh my gosh, the classic. Yeah, I guess in retrospect, I don't know what Sam's view of consciousness is, given the fact that he's entertained his wife's view about panpsychism. Like, my understanding is that the way that we go about science is such that if like much of what we already know implies that there's no route to be had here, then we ought not start with the assumption that that route is possible and then guide our science that way. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. The thing with department researchers is they can both write and have in-depth knowledge, and they also teach. Having even 3 acquaintances like that could be useful. Right, yeah. I think it would be beneficial for... I don't want to just like give someone something to read. Perhaps it would be beneficial for me to write or speak. So yeah, I'll probably have to... I'll have to figure that one out. Figure out the best way to go about that. It certainly will help having a finished draft of part 1, 2, and 3, but that's not happening for a while. So I probably shouldn't wait for that. I mean, it's nice that we have the finished draft of part 1. I do think that's huge, especially for philosophy feedback or science feedback. Animated shorts, that's going to be expensive though. Either that or it's all AI, which I don't know if we want to be jumping into. Just for the optics, you know. It might be pragmatic, but I don't know. I'm scared about that type of optic. Let me find a random animator on a TED video and check the price. Oh. Do TED videos have animations? Yeah, no, I'd be curious to see what the price is for something like that.
Of wisdom, with a hearty tread, a hearty confidence. However you may be your own source of experience. Throw off your discontent about your nature. Forgive yourself, your own self. You have it in your power to merge everything you have lived through. False starts, errors, delusions, passions, your loves and your hopes into your goal with nothing left over. My principal article of faith is that one can only flourish among people who share the identical ideas and the identical will. I have no one. That is my sickness.
Oh.
If, adopting a popular manner, I recommend Schopenhauer or Wagner to the Germans or conjure up Zarathustra's, these are my remedies. Above all else, they are hiding places where I can lose myself for a time. What is good? Everything that heightens the feeling of power in man, the will to power, power itself. What is bad? Everything that is born of weakness. What is more harmful than any vice? Active pity.
So when Nietzsche talks about power, I'm wondering if he's referring to something like agency that we're talking about, because maybe I'm just biased because I've been in this headspace, but like the whole idea here is that there's a lot about our physiology and our biology that kind of sets us up for certain behaviors, certain constraints, certain conditions. There's a lot of automatic behaviors that we just find ourselves in. And obviously there's habits of thought that we build and all this stuff. Like in my mind, it seems like Nietzsche has recognized all these types of automatic things, and in many cases these things contradict our will, like our what we wish to have happen, what we wish to do, etc. Whether that is like, I don't know, drinking alcohol or using our phone right when we wake up. And so power, you could say that that's like a diminishment of power. That's actually like a weakness that we have. And he's interested in this power. Like, how do we gain that agency? And so, yeah, obviously that's what we're like kind of trying to do here by pointing out the levers of agency that we actually have. But I don't know. The will to power is what Nietzsche believes motivates us. Oh. Well, that's tricky, because it seems like what motivates us is, I mean, in the most granular sense, like dopamine and other baseline emotional chemicals and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of automatic stuff that motivates us. Like, it's the idea can't be that there is just this thing that's good that motivates us. We might like to interpret it as will to power would be only a retrospective us just attempting to interpret what that feeling is. Like, it feels like we're gaining, like perhaps it feels like we could be gaining power when we're following our drives, but our drives can be calibrated such that they lead to things that don't give us power, like addictions. All right. Schopenhauer thinks it's the will to life. Yeah, like Schopenhauer would be wrong as well. You have like, I think we're in a position where all these would be inappropriate because of what we know about our underlying physiology. Like we now have enough of the answer to know what motivates us in some sense. Now, yeah, in terms of you know, motivating us in terms of like lifelong motivation, you know, we can get to we could start talking about like self-determination theory. But that, I don't think that's what motivates us, right? That's just that's more of a discussion about what can lead to us feeling good about our motivations. So I don't know if that's the way to go about it. Yeah, I think when you talk about what motivates us, you have to talk about it at this level. And then we can start talking about what actually leads you to feeling like you're following a path that's worth following, which is what I think they're trying to interpret and conflate the two. Not a bad summary, to be honest. It's basically self-determination. Right. Yeah. The thing with self-determination, though, is that's more of a criteria for what leads to feeling not motivated, but feeling not satisfied. But what would be the word? Accomplished? No. Feeling content. Feeling rewarded. But that's not to say like without the notion, or what would I say? The reason why we have to teach self-determination theory is because it's not people's natural motivations. It's really like in theory it could be a natural motivation because it has the reward, so you could expect that there's some correlation there, because the reward affects the change in our brains, and therefore it would affect habits of thought and behavior that lead towards that. That being said, there's more powerful things today that can hijack those systems. So you know, we don't have necessarily it's harder to see. But maybe we could say that it's really maybe like if 1 out of 3 of those criteria are so compelling that they might be the motivation, but then they take from the others. Like I'm trying to imagine like someone who's addicted to video games. They can get the competency. That's a huge deal. They obviously get the agency, but they might not get the recognition unless there's other people playing the games, or talking about the games, or you know, once video games once the video games have what's it called, like AI that could actually recognize the user's choices in like a very meaningful way, then we're gonna have a real problem. Because then people will be able to get self-determination all from those video games. But trying to understand Nietzsche scientifically would be wrong. Erlich von Wilhelmowitz, Moellendorf tried to critique Nietzsche's view of classics, but Nietzsche's motivation is very peculiar. From the Wikipedia article, at the age of 80, when Wilhelmowitz wrote his memoirs, he saw the conflict with Nietzsche less passionately, but did not retract the essential points of his critique. He stated that he had not fully realized at the time that Nietzsche was not interested in scientific understanding, but rather in Wagner's musical drama. Okay. Yeah, I understand that Nietzsche's not specifically trying to talk about the science, but for him to make statements such as like what our fundamental motivation is, that like today that requires a scientific view. That's the critique. Oh, that is the critique is on the birth of tragedy, by the way. Huh. Yeah, perhaps I just need to know Nietzsche more comprehensively. Or just more at all.
The failures and all the weak, that is Christianity. Christianity is the religion of pity. We are deprived of strength when we feel pity. Every true faith is infallible. It performs what the believing person hopes to find in it, but it does not offer the least support for the establishing of an objective truth. Here, the ways of men.
All right, I just have to point out he's evoked objective truth, and when was Nietzsche around? See, the issue is that Nietzsche thinks he's talking about objective truth, right? And if he's around dying at 1900, then he is no closer to objective truth than Christianity is. Like that's just kind of, that's kind of how... I mean, maybe saying that is a little too ambiguous, or it doesn't mean much. But the point is, especially given the fact that, with all the stuff we know about things that people think are objective truth, like facts about the physical world and whatnot, once again, our very view of the physical roots of our brain and body would strongly suggests that the notion of objective truth is somewhat unintelligible when it comes to some actual authoritative status of ontology in the world. Truth is the Nietzschean sense. Oh, in the Nietzschean sense is the Platonic truth, right? I think Platonic truth is like kind of one of the main things I'm assaulting here. Like, yeah, he just doesn't know enough to like see the contingency of his own ideas, and that puts him in a terrible position to talk about objective truth, as far as I'm concerned, like as far as we can be concerned today. So yeah, we do have to be careful with that one.
Divide. If you want to achieve peace of mind and happiness, have faith. If you want to be a disciple of truth, then search.
That's pretty cool though. I like that one. That's kind of a banger. Though I think I think a lot of Christians would argue that that religion is founded upon a truth that you find through a process, right? Like that's, whatever it is. God is the truth. God is the way. Yeah, even though Christianity often becomes dogmatized, I think there is an interpretation of Christianity such that the truth is still something that you search for. So I think that there is still an interpretation of these religions that maybe Nietzsche was not exposed to. Or perhaps that just lived on past Nietzsche. You could understand Nietzsche as a bit of a perspectivist, actually. What is a perspectivist? Do I think Nietzsche would enjoy Marty Supreme? I think so. I think he would enjoy it. Man, Marty Supreme would blow Nietzsche away. This guy lived in the 1900s. He hasn't seen a screen at all. He has no idea what film is capable of. All right. Is the epistemological principle that perception of and knowledge of something are always bound to their interpretive perspectives of those observing it? Okay. Well, I'm curious what he is referring to by objective truth. Theory of knowledge, that knowledge of a subject is inevitably partial and limited by the individual perspective. Okay. Would it be fundamentally inappropriate for a perspectivist to claim the possibility of some objective truth? I'm curious what this says, because this is a nuanced question. Nietzsche would love movies, music, and frames. Hell yeah. Dropping facts. All right. Perspectivism is interpreted in different ways, ranging from a hard relativism to a more moderate epistemological stance. The short answer is no, it is not fundamentally inappropriate. While perspectivism challenges the idea of a God's eye view, a view from nowhere, many interpretations allow for the existence of an objective reality, even if our access to it is always mediated through a perspective. I see. So this is a Kantian idea, right? Am I wrong about that? Or is this Descartes? What's the idea here? That there's a difference between references and reference. Here's a breakdown of why a perspectivist might still claim the possibility of objective truth. Right. Okay, Nietzsche's multiplicity of eyes. Here we go. Look at this. The father of modern perspectivism did not necessarily deny reality. Instead, he argued against the idea of a single absolute impersonal conceptual scheme that captures the whole truth. I see. So he's searching for some aspect of truth. Accumulating perspectives. Nietzsche suggested that the more eyes and different kinds of eyes we can bring to bear on the matter, the more complete our objectivity becomes. Objectivity as a composite. In this view, objective truth isn't the absence of perspective, but the ability to employ a variety of perspectives to triangulate a more robust understanding of reality. All right. That's pretty cool. Unfortunately, like, we still have to... still this view would not hold up to what we know today, because now we have a semantic game over what type of aggregation actually leads to objective truth. If everyone's experiencing the world differently in each moment, and that their own understanding is constantly changing, then what is objective truth in the moment? Is it an aggregation of everyone's, a snapshot of everyone's understanding? And then how do we do that aggregation? Like, what is it such that if we were to survey everyone, whether or not this one thing is true or not, what's the equation here that allows us to do this type of aggregation? It's got to be theoretical, right? And then even then, like, it's still ambiguous as to what it's telling us. It's all right. Nietzsche hated Kant. Did you see the Alex O'Connor episode today? I did not. Was it any good? All right, so I want to ask, was it Descartes or Kant that had the view of referent versus reference? What am I thinking of? Representation versus represented. So this is what Hegel tries to get out of. So for Hegel, the truth becomes something that wouldn't be able to be wouldn't be able to be like this, such that there is an existence of an objective truth, while our access is just mediated through a perspective. I think that's the way I read this. Okay, you're most likely thinking of Kant, though Descartes set the stage. Kant is famous for drawing an absolute line between the representation and the represented. The representation, this is the world as we experience it. Kant argues that we never perceive the world directly. We only perceive our mind's representation of it. The represented, the nomina, the thing in itself. We got phenomena, we got nomina. We've got things for us, and then we got things in themselves. This is the object as it exists independently of us. Kant famously argued that the represented thing is unknowable. We can think about it, but we can never truly know it because we can't step outside our own perspective. Okay. And then was it Hegel that attempted to bridge this this gap between represented and representation? Okay. It was a good one. Okay, well, let's check it out. Oh my gosh, he's doing live shows? Nothing in the US? Come on. Do we not have YouTube? There we go. Do we exist in the mind of God? Oh my gosh. That's got to be tough. All right, I'm sorry, Alex, but we're going to do it. We have to do it.
Hey, I'm going on a tour.
It's an hour and 50 minutes. We got to do it. Yes, exactly. Hegel is the primary philosopher who looked at Kant's unbridgeable gap and essentially said this gap is an illusion of our own making. While Kant built a wall between the mind, representation, and reality, the represented thing in itself, Hegel tried to tear that wall down. Here's what Hegel attempted to bridge, or rather dissolve, how he attempted to bridge, or rather dissolve that gap. Their critique of the thing in itself. Hegel attacked Kant's concept of the thing in itself, the unknowable reality behind the scenes. Hegel's argument, he argued that it is logically incoherent to talk about something that is unknowable. The moment you think there is something I cannot know, you have already formed a concept of it. You have already brought it into your mind. The conclusion, if you can think about the thing in itself enough to say it exists, it is no longer outside of thought. Therefore, there is no spooky reality hidden behind our representations. The rational is the real. This is Hegel's most famous and controversial claim. He bridged the gap by claiming that thought and reality are ultimately the same substance. Kant's view, the structure of our mind imposes order on a chaotic world. Hegel's view, the structure of our mind is the structure of the world. So this is this is the type of view that we kind of have here. This is like the idealism side of my usual spiel, where we kind of carry this conceptual experience. Our understanding of the world is conceptual. The laws of logic are not just rules for thinking, they are the rules of existence. Okay, now that's tricky though, once we start getting into the laws of logic. Therefore, there's no gap to bridge because the representation and the represented are just two sides of the same coin. All right. The dialectic, the process of bridging. He viewed this gap not as a permanent wall, but as a growing pain. Through the dialectic, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, human consciousness gradually learns that what looked like foreign external objects are actually rational concepts that we can understand. Okay. Now to take this home, can you make sense of Brandam's conceptual idealism as he understands Hegel? All right. Grok, am I part of God? All right, what do we got? In this video, philosopher and theologian David Bentley Hart discusses his book, All Things Are Full of Gods, and explores the concept of mind as fundamental to reality, contrasting it with the mechanistic, materialistic view. All right. Hart explains his interpretation of the ancient maxim, suggesting that nature possesses an inherent intentionality and consciousness. He argues that this view offers a more insightful understanding of the cosmos compared to the mechanistic perspective that emerged after the 17th century. All right. Historical trajectory of the scientific method. Hart delves into how the scientific method developed by intentionally removing subjective and mental aspects from its study of nature. He discusses how this initial methodological choice, while honorable and useful for technological advancement, later led to the flawed attempt to apply a mechanical model to understand mental phenomena, resulting in various forms of reductionism like eliminativism. Eliminativism is the philosophical view, especially in the philosophy of mind, that posits certain things we commonly believe, like mental states, don't actually exist, but are rather mistaken concepts from a primitive folk psychology that will be replaced by mature neuroscience. All right. He critically examines the idea of a third-person perspective in science, arguing that it's a distillation of first-person perspectives and not a truly detached view. All right, critique of materialistic worldview. He elaborates on what he perceives as the mechanistic picture of the universe, where reality is reduced to the mindless exchange of energetic forces between masses in motion. He argues that even modern materialists, despite advancements in fields like molecular biology and quantum mechanics, still implicitly adhere to this billiard ball view of reality. Where reality is reduced to the mindless exchange of energy. Okay. The case for mind as fundamental. Hart addresses the idealism of the gaps critique, asserting that his argument isn't based on what science fails to explain, but rather on what mind, life, and language do. He emphasizes the self-referential nature of consciousness, the hierarchical structure of life, and the semantic nature of biological processes as evidence for an inherent intentionality and formal final causes in nature that cannot be reconciled with a purely materialist framework. He refers to Robert Rosen's work, suggesting that the laws of life are fundamental and physics are merely limiting conditions. So unfortunately, like I can't condone any of this. Alex, after one shroom trip, yeah. Once again, same with the consciousness videos. Like we know enough about the brain to know that the thoughts that we have about our experience and our consciousness, etc., are contingent upon a lot. A lot means, our genetics, our upbringing, our culture, our mood. The mood that we are in affects how we think about our experience, our conscious state, etc. You might say that's obvious, but we know so much about how brain and body affect the experience we have. We are starting to find clear correlates between concepts and the brain. Crazy stuff. All right, critique of emergence. Hart distinguishes between weak or structural emergence, where composite properties arise from constituent parts like the wet. Okay, and strong emergence, where fundamentally new we gotta stay away from this idea of emergence. He argues that strong emergence, as used by materialists to explain consciousness, is a fallacious concept because it attempts to derive intrinsic intentional states from. Yes, so I think the scientists that do this need to be careful about. Like, you do have to be careful about this type of thing. This is why I think physicalists fail at this. Like, you have to acknowledge that even when we're talking about physical science, we're operating in this conceptual space, which is not the actual physical world. So, okay. That was a good summary. All right. Robert Brandam's reading of Hegel, often found in his massive work, A Spirit of Trust, is essentially a rescue mission. He attempts to take Hegel's seemingly mystical claim, the rational is the real, and translate it into acceptable, analytic, almost linguistic terms. He tackles the representation versus represented problem by redefining what it means for a world to be conceptual. So, by the way, this is not the way that we go about conceptual. It's just this is influenced the way I think about these things very significantly. Okay, Gemini, chill. What was are you saying Gemini's glazing Brandon now too much? I'm fine with any Brandon glazing. All right, here is how Brandon's conceptual idealism makes sense of the bridge between mind and world. The problem, objective idealism sounds crazy. If you take Hegel literally, the world is made of thought. It sounds like he is denying science. It sounds like he thinks the universe didn't exist until humans started thinking about it. Brandon wants to keep Hegel's idealism, the structure of the world is conceptual, while maintaining realism. The world exists independently of us. All right. The solution, distinguishing sense from reference. Brandon argues that Hegel and Kant distinguish between two types of dependence. This is the technical heart of Brandon's argument. Sense dependence, understanding the concept of an object depends on our thinking. You cannot have the concept of copper without a mind to think it. But then existence dependence, being. The object itself does not depend on our thinking. Copper existed long before humans evolved. Right. I don't know if he makes this clear, but like when we talk about this type of, this might sound like we're now creating a gap between the thing in itself and like the perception, the phenomena. But the thing in itself here, like, it would still not be the actual physical copper. Like that's the tricky thing. It's still like, it's almost theoretical in a sense. It's still something manifest in the experience of us thinking it exists or understanding it. All right, Hegel claims reciprocal sense dependence. The structure of our thought, concepts, and the structure of the world, properties, facts, are mutually dependent. So this is where like this allows it to be much more clear. You cannot understand one without the other. The structure of our thought, concepts, and the structure of the world, properties, and facts are mutually dependent. So, I mean, you can think about this thing this way, right? You can think about it this way. I don't go in this exact route. This is really like tricky. But the thing that I'm seeing when I read this is that like when we think about what we understand, like it can only be in this conceptual shape. Like that's the only shape it can ever be experienced in or with. The fact that it feels like these things exist independent of these thoughts, the fact that it feels as though something exists independent of the concept of it, is simply a manifestation of our physiology, of the emotions we experience, of predictive processing, of prediction error. Wish Brandon would pick up the damn phone. Well, I don't think we're calling Brandon. I don't even know if Brandon... I think I said this. Like, I don't even know if Brandon's actually the right person to talk to. Like, I don't think he's interested in what I'm doing. I'm going in a different direction than he is, in a fundamental sense. He's still actually, he's still like kind of in a analytic space where he's trying to make a philosophical rule set and live with it rather than translating that to some accessible language that incorporates science and tries to really ground it in the world. Yo, big dog. Right, your book king totes with... That's what is this? What he's gonna respond, or is that how I should email him? It would be wild if he just responded that and then didn't say anything else. All right, asymmetric existence dependence. The world exists without us. We depend on the world to exist. The world does not depend on us. So this is where I'm gonna like separate myself, because I actually have like something to ground this in, you know, like we can ground our concepts in experience, but we're not able to ground this. If this thing is still conceptual, we can't ground this as in anything that exists independently of us. So I think that's my leg over Brandom, that I'm leveraging the physiology of emotion to explain why something can feel objective even though it is fundamentally subjective. All right, the modal bridge, the key insight. How can Brandom say the world is conceptual if it exists without us? Brandom argues that concepts are not just mental pictures like Descartes or mental categories like Kant. Concepts are rules of inference. To have the concept copper is to know the rule. If I heat this to 1085 C, it will melt. So you know, Brandom's going big into the, you know, relations of compatibility and consequence and whatever. Here is the bridge in the mind. These rules are called inferences. In the world, these rules are called laws of nature. Brandom argues that objective reality is modal. The world isn't just a heap of stuff, it's a web of necessary connections. Because the world is structured by laws, and our minds are structured by logic, the stuff of the mind and the stuff of the world are the same shape. So, yeah, a lot of this stuff obviously goes in a very different direction than I do, but Sarah is in top 5 streams of all time for show. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I need someone to come in here and like give some, not someone come in here, but I need to talk with someone who can like try to challenge me on these things. You know, I want to get in the ring. Because yeah, I'm curious how I can do in response to counter arguments, and then I'm curious also how I can get better at that, because I'm sure I'm not going to be great right off the bat. I remember the Kantian gap, mind world. Brandom argues that Hegel destroyed this gap by showing that concepts and laws are identical in form. When we think correctly, the subjective order of our inferences matches the objective order of the world's causal laws. So this is where I got the connecting the semantic relations with the normative relations. And Brandom doesn't do this connection, but connecting that to how we learn information is actually like that's what keeps everything together. The fact that we learn semantic facts about the world, semantic relations, as rules, you know, how we not explicitly but implicitly, like how we ought to talk about these things, how we, you know, we literally learn things, and you know, in school we literally take tests on it. You know, like when you're taking a test, you're following norms, and you're going to be punished if you don't follow the norms in the right way. But you know, in a much more you know, granular sense, I always bring up the idea of like when someone, you know, first of all, when a baby's learning something, you kind of like point to something, you tell them that this is what you're supposed to think when you see this thing. This is the type of words to have in your head when you see this thing. This is like your conditioning. And then obviously, like when even adults speak to each other, they're negotiating norms about how we ought to speak about concepts, and that, I think that's a pretty intuitive story as well. You know, that's something we do. We obviously, there's a lot of I guess like there's a lot of concepts that we know that aren't as like clear cut that we do negotiate over. I think it's harder for people to intuit when we're talking about something that we think is like so ingrained, like, you know, a school bus being yellow. Like obviously we're not able to really negotiate on that type of assertion because it's so easily recognizable. And you know, if someone were to try to act as if a school bus wasn't yellow, they would receive immediate pushback. All right. Therefore, there is no representation standing. Wait, when we think correctly, the subjective form of our inferences matches the objective order of the world's causal laws. Therefore, there's no representation standing between us and the represented. When you master the concept of copper, your mind is navigating the exact same logical structure that the physical copper is obeying. So, yeah, like, I mean, the way he's talking about this thing, and I'm thinking that Gemini's getting this right. There might be nuance that Brandon would be like, this is not exactly right here. But either way, this is still way too far away from what I ended up putting in the document, because it's still way too analytic. Like, it's still operating in this like completely separate logical structure, logical rule set, and it's untethered from science. All right, Brandon's social truth. Finally, Brandon explains how we get to this truth. He views Hegel's spirit not as a cosmic ghost, but as a social practice. We bridge the gap through the social game of giving and asking for reasons. And so, yeah, this was huge for me to connect the trajectory of our thoughts with our social engagements, which I do try to highlight in part one, but we need to go deeper in that. I got to change that up a little bit. Objectivity is not a view from nowhere. Objectivity is a structural feature of our social reasoning. We hold each other accountable to the rules of the world. Okay. Now, let's just have some fun. Let's have some indulgent fun. Okay, now how does this document further bring this to a contemporary understanding? Maybe that's a little leading, but I think we can lead in that way. Okay, we need to finish this.
My fate. One day, my name will be associated with the memory of something tremendous. A crisis without equal on Earth.
Yikes.
The most profound collision of conscience, conjured up against everything that had been believed, demanded, hallowed so far. Where you see ideals, I see what is human. Alas, all too human. It is my fate that I have to be the first decent human being.
Wow. Yeesh.
Every single one.
Yeah, is it all the World War II stuff that he's associated with now, or is it just all of the atrocities in the 20th century? Like, has that already come to fruition? I mean, I guess it's a good bet. You know, in the same way, I don't want to be associated with this, but in the same way, like, you know, we're getting more technology. Like, it's going to be possible to eclipse those atrocities in the future. Like, we still have human beings, same underlying genetics with just more power. So, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the Germans loved him. He's been reclaimed, though. Oh my gosh. He's already very controversial after all. Yeah, like, isn't he essentially... Yeah, I don't think he's triumphantly pointing out that he's going to be connected to atrocities coming up. I think that's kind of... hopefully... maybe it's... You know... in a very meta sense, like the reason why he can be that controversial, even though it seems like he's saying the opposite of what people are taking him to say, is because of how ambiguously he wrote. Like that's the whole point. Like you want to write in such a way that no one could take you to mean something you don't mean to say. And while the stuff that he says is actually, profound and obviously well written and intriguing and whatnot, like it can be taken in multiple ways, and that can be a problem. Pragmatically, like pity makes us weak, goes after everything, even that is controversial. He actually hated anti-Semites. Nice. I think the reason he's controversial is because he's very anti all values we know so far. Yeah, fair enough. We need to play around with the values. We gotta develop them. We gotta figure out where we actually want to keep them and which ones we want to talk about and whatnot. All right, let's get indulgent here. The document you uploaded essentially acts as a massive translation project. It takes the high-level philosophical concepts we just discussed, Hegel's bridge, Brandam's norms, and the tension between subject and object, and grounds them in modern neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and psychology. Here's how the document brings these philosophical abstractions into a contemporary scientific understanding. Representation becomes predictive processing. The document replaces the philosophical term representation with the neuroscientific theory of predictive processing. We view the world through a lens or mental image. The brain is a prediction machine. We do not passively receive sensory data. We actively project a model onto the world. What we experience is our prediction of reality. The thing in itself, objective reality, is what pushes back when our predictions fail. So that's kind of... I wonder if... Do I say that, actually? It's kind of... that's the way that we can think about it. So the one thing that this... Gemini's kind of, the way that Gemini's saying this is not the way I would like to say it. It's not that this is the way that the world is, or I don't want to say that the thing in itself is. I never want to say that objective reality is something here, but we can think about objective reality as constituted by these rules that, when we experience the world in such a way that violates these rules, prediction error occurs. So that's my attempt at bridging that gap. Gemini, glaze a bit more, please. Glaze, glaze, glaze. I'm a big fan of glazed donuts. Here we go. The document calls this prediction error when we are wrong. Reality breaks through our representation, forcing us to update the model. So in my mind, this is like a nice way of connecting it with Hegel's dialectic. Concepts become schemas and neural pathways. It takes Brandam's idea that concepts are rules of inference and translates them into schema theory and neuroplasticity. A concept like chair is a bundle of normative rules it ought to be sat on. We can connect this by thinking about these concepts as schemas, a consolidated pattern of neural activity. These schemas are not static. They are physically etched into the brain through plasticity. So this is pointing out that they change over time. Also, the cool thing that we just got from Lisa Feldman Barrett that we have to incorporate into the document is degeneracy. Okay, no, maybe this isn't the name. What was the word that she used? Yeah, no, this is it. Degeneracy. Repeat. Did we see that? Okay, I gotta just read this then. Refers to the occurrence of different processes or structures leading to the same result. So when we think about an object, a concept, we can imagine that it's not even just, it's more complex than just the exact set of connections are being activated in order to get this object. Degeneracy, it tells us that, And this also points out that the brain is so complex that we can think about an object in seemingly, like consciously, the same way, but we're dealing with two different sets of connections. That sounds wrong. Are you saying what I just read here, degeneracy refers to the occurrence of different processes or structures leading to the same result? Because the way you get this is that the brain is so complex in terms of how many neurons are involved. Oh, we got to talk about degeneracy. Yeah, I don't know why it's called degeneracy. That sounds so bad. And obviously the first thing that comes up here is talking about degeneration. Oh, nice. Lisa Feldman Barrett? Oh, did she talk through it?
One of the most surprising things I've learned as a neuroscientist is that fear, or any other mental event, is not created by only one set of neurons. Instead, combinations of different neurons can create the exact same feeling of fear. Neuroscientists call this principle degeneracy. Degeneracy means many to one. For example, take a look at this face. What emotion do you see? Now, what emotion do you see? It's enjoyment. This facial expression looks very different from this facial expression, which is also enjoyment. So they're both enjoyment, but the facial expressions are very different. This is an example of degeneracy. Degeneracy is very common in everyday life. Have you ever made pancakes, for example? You probably have a favorite recipe. Mine includes buttermilk. When I'm out of buttermilk, I'll sometimes use sour cream, or I'll sometimes use whole milk mixed with a little bit of lemon.
All right.
The end result is
I don't know if I like these analogies here, but she's got a YouTube channel that does not look like enjoyment. She looks like she's doing the cinnamon challenge, yeah. Oh man, I totally forgot about the cinnamon challenge. That brings me back. All right, the bridge. The rational becomes the biological. We learn these concepts not just through logic, but through homeostasis and embodied. Okay, so it's just throwing shit at us. Spirit, social norms become social equilibrium. Right, the document adopts Brandam's view that that truth is socially negotiated, but it explains it through evolutionary psychology and social dynamics. That's fair. We hold each other accountable to shared norms. Individual subjective worlds align into a social equilibrium through pragmatic interaction. We avoid the pain of social. So, you know, when we say a social equilibrium, that doesn't mean that we've arrived at a static equilibrium. An equilibrium is a way we can think about the current moment at every moment, and it's just kind of a way to make the sense of how we're constantly, you know, regulating each other's way of thinking about the world. We avoid the pain of social rejection, a form of prediction error, by aligning our internal models with the group's reality. That's the type of equilibrium that we can describe more generally. Objective truth in a social sense is defined as a state where our private prediction models are pragmatically similar enough to... So, I mean, I wouldn't talk about objective truth this way. I like talking about objective truth most closely to the experience itself. Freedom becomes reflective of realignment. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Document argues that we are distinct biological entities who construct a shared navigable world through the friction of error. Hegel's dialectic is basically the brain's cycle of prediction, error, update. Brandam's norms are the socially reinforced schemas that help us minimize that error. That's really nicely said. Is that as far as we can go? It gives us the manual to operate. Okay, the document asserts that understanding this machinery doesn't strip life of meaning. Rather, it gives us the manual to operate our own freedom by consciously engaging in that error correction process. Is that as far as we can go? Okay, I think it's actually going to do something that we don't want it to do. I wasn't clear enough with my question. Okay, I should get off though too. We could watch this tomorrow. We could watch this tomorrow. What do we got going on here? And what happened here? What's going on here? What is this? Oh, is this the self-actualization stuff? Okay, we don't need any of this anymore. Actually, no, I do want to keep this. Yeah. SRD. Boom. No, that is not the endpoint. The document. No. Okay. Is this as far as we can go regarding this type of philosophy? Is this document? Is the contents of this document? Are you aware of any other resources that further this story? In other words, create a more compelling framing, grounded in our contemporary understanding of human biology, psychology, etc. What else? What do we look at? What's going on? All right, why things to do instead of doom scrolling never works. Is this a comedic video? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna press the button. Things to do instead of doom scrolling. The video challenges the common advice of things to do instead of doom scrolling by arguing that these suggestions often require too much energy, brain power, planning, unlike the mindless engagement provided by cell phones. The creator highlights that algorithms are designed to be addictive. Yeah, the core argument of the video is that to replace a lazy, mind-numbing habit like doom scrolling, one needs a similar lazy, mind-numbing activity. This idea is supported by a deep dive into the science of hands and brains. The video explains that human hands and brains are intimately connected, with hands often referred to as the outer brain. Our brains evolve to include tools we frequently use into our body schemas, making them feel like extensions of ourselves. This explains why phones constantly in our pockets become a permanent part of our body schema. The embodiment shortens the gap between impulse and action, leading to automatic phone checking. The extended mind framework suggests that phones aren't just okay, all this is good. Mind wandering, often a source of creativity, is now frequently interrupted by phone checking, bombarding. Okay, this is fine. Fidgeting is mind wandering. So the video proposes that engaging in low-effort, easy activities that keep your hands busy can be a practical alternative to doom scrolling. These activities should be performable when not exhausted and wanting to rot, require minimal to no brain. Okay, doable on the couch. So I don't think this is absolutely necessary. I think this is just a way you can go about this. You can try to make it even easier by finding something mind-numbing for your hands. But I don't know if just because there's that connection between our hands and brains, I don't think that necessarily means that her other assertion is right. She would need to test that other assertion. Like, I think she's got good logic for a hypothesis, and now you need to actually test the hypothesis. Is it easier to break these types of habits when you have another mind-numbing thing that you can do with your hands, or that maybe there's no difference, like, maybe doing something else that's mind-numbing could be fine. Or maybe there's another way you can go about it where you do put in a little bit of willpower, but you have slow change. That's kind of my approach. Rather than trying to replace your current habit with a completely different habit that also has to do with your hands, I would argue replace your current habit with a habit that's slightly less hurting. What's the word? I forget. And do that over and over again. Try to like work your way out of that. Unless we look it up and like the best advice on this matter is actually to go cold turkey. I'm not sure. We got to look into that when we do our whole addiction arc. What is it with neuroscientists and food, especially baking and stuff? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's like the most salient example they always think. Something's up. Buttermilk, what are the chances? I think it could be sort of middle ground before you go achieve the you always on your damn phone phase. Going around people telling them always on your damn phone. Yeah, I think there's probably healthier ways you could go about it. Ways in which you can, like, you know, move it around in your day, or choose to just, you know, not use the phone during these hours if you're like constantly on it. The video emphasizes that the goal is not self-improvement or embracing discomfort, but rather finding an understimulating activity to replace the phone. How is that not self-improvement? Or embracing discomfort? It also includes... So this, yeah, I don't know if this is like actually... What does this solve if you find something is similarly stimulating? Oh, it's an understimulating activity. I don't... This might be missing the point. You need some type of stimulation to offset the... Like, how do you just do this? It also includes a humorous segment on low-effort hobbies. Okay, I see. Like, if you were to just replace using your phone with you know, doing something with your hands, like crocheting or something. Wait a second. How does it know that the video draws on all these things? She must say it, right? I don't know. All right. What do we got? If you want to go further into the specific verticals that ground this philosophy in contemporary biology and psychology, you should look into the primary sources that heavily influence this type of framework, specifically the blend of predictive processing and activism and narrative psychology. Okay, so, hey, there we go. We got, once again, Being You by Anil Seth. Man, this book is haunting us. Maybe I just have to read it. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm finishing this Sapolsky book for like over 3 months. Like, it's so huge. It is ridiculously large. That being said, this might be the next up. For the biological basis of value and meaning, we got The Strange Order of Things. Yo, my gosh. I must have already asked this question. All right, for the social narrative bridge, Folk Psychological Narratives by Daniel Hutto. The document suggests we are shaped by social norms. I'm curious, didn't it see that I've already I already referenced The Strange Order of Things? All right, for the active component in activism, The Embodied Mind by Varela, Thompson, and Roche. This is the seminal text for embodied cognition. It moves beyond the brain as a computer. Okay. Is the document finished? No, the Stan Richardson Project itself appears to be an iterative, community-driven effort that is currently incomplete, with planned sections like Part 3 regarding the ultimate aim, path for life still in development. It is a living document meant to be... Yo, they got me? What the heck? I just got by Gemini here. It is a living document meant to be updated as the community digests these denser scientific resources. Okay, this video directly addresses the hard problem through the pragmatic neuroscientific lens mentioned in your document. Okay. Wow. That was kind of a... This has got to chill. That was kind of a jump scare. All right, I can do... Do we need this tomorrow? Oh, I need that. I need that one. What is this one? Oh, this is our... These are our protocols, right? No, what is this? This was the one that we were using to help us learn stuff from this. This is our protocols. I have to go through all these on the side. This is now SRD. Stream. Maybe stream. Maybe just SRD. I don't know. I'll keep it like that. All right. I'm going to call it there. A nice long 2.5 hours. The Stan feedback loop. Gemini, you can find all this stuff, but you can't find me a maiden. Have you tried? Have you asked? What it'd be crazy is if you asked it a philosophy question one day and it gave you as an example or something. That would be pretty cool. I guess that's kind of not like a goal, but it's not like a direct goal, but I guess it's kind of an indirect goal. Like I think that would be just a outcome of the type of growth that we would like to have and influence, hopefully. All right, guys. Thank you all for chilling. Have a good rest of the day. Have a good week. Let's make it a good week. And yeah. Keep at it. Keep the grind going.